A severed, blue-green alien hand clutched the wreckage of the destroyed ship, smoke still rising from the stumps of its missing fingers. I could see the alien's chest gently rising as it clung to life. The humans had found it. They didn't understand what it was, or why it was here. But they knew one thing: if they didn't save its life, their own lives might be forfeit. I leaned back in my chair, surveying the room of eager Ocampa students. As the resident historian, it was my duty to recount the pivotal moments of our people's past. None were more critical than the fateful first contact between the Ocampa and humans during the brutal Zorgon War. "You see," I began, "General Tharos was our greatest hope. Our people were fighting a losing war against the reptilian Zorgons. They outnumbered us 10-1. Their tactics were ruthless and cruel. We Ocampa, for all our technological prowess, were slowly being crushed under the weight of their assault." I could see the worry etched on my students' faces, even though they knew the ultimate outcome. In a final, desperate gambit, our High Command sent Tharos himself to lead an all-out attack on the Zorgon homeworld. It was a bold move, but Tharos was our best strategist. If anyone could turn the tide, it was him. I paused, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. But something went wrong. During the assault, Tharos's ship took critical damage. He was forced to crash land on a remote, seemingly uninhabited planet. Gravely wounded, his communications destroyed, he lay in the wreckage believing his end had come, and with him the hopes of the Ocampa people. The students were at the edge of their seats now, fully invested. Little did they know how this story would unfold. But the planet was not as empty as Tharos thought. On the far side, a small group of humans had established a research outpost. They called themselves the United Earth Space Agency. They knew nothing of our war, of the Ocampa or the Zorgons, but they were about to be thrown into the center of a conflict that would change the fate of the galaxy. I smiled knowingly. This, my dear students, was the beginning of something extraordinary, a chance meeting that would alter the course of history for both our peoples. For in the events that followed, the humans would prove themselves to be the most surprising allies the Ocampa had ever known. The stage was set, the pieces were in motion, and as I delved into the details of this fateful encounter, I could see the wonderment and anticipation growing in the eyes of my young audience. They were ready to hear the tale of how a wounded alien general's rescue by the humans marked a turning point in the war and forged an unbreakable bond between two very different species. As the story goes, Captain Parker and his intrepid crew, Lieutenant Jack Mitchell, Sergeant Sarah Thompson, and Corporal Michael Chen, were in the midst of their usual planetary survey when their sensors picked up an anomaly. It was a crash site, the wreckage of a ship unlike any they had seen before. Parker, a man driven by curiosity and the thirst for knowledge, made the call to investigate. They approached the site with caution, unsure of what they might find. The twisted metal and still smoldering debris painted a picture of a violent impact. But it was what they found inside that truly shocked them. There, clinging to life, was Tharos. His blue-green skin was marred with injuries, his once proud uniform now tattered and stained with his own blood. Despite their reservations, the sight of a sentient being in such dire need stirred something in the humans. They couldn't just leave him there to die. Parker gave the order, and they carefully extracted Tharos from the wreckage, bringing him back to their outpost. Now the humans' medical technology was advanced, even by galactic standards. It was this expertise that would prove crucial in the hours to come. They worked tirelessly, using every resource at their disposal to stabilize the alien general. It was touch and go for a while, but their efforts paid off. Tharos, against all odds, survived. When he first awoke, Tharos was understandably disoriented. He found himself in a strange place, surrounded by creatures he had never encountered before. Parker tried to communicate, to assure Tharos that he was safe, but their translation software was rudimentary at best. Progress was slow, and Tharos remained wary, unsure if these odd beings were friend or foe. Little did the humans know, but their actions had not gone unnoticed. The Zorgons, ever watchful, had tracked Tharos's ship to this planet. They were already marshalling their forces, preparing to descend upon the world to capture or kill their hated enemy. The clock was ticking, and the humans, blissfully unaware, continued their efforts to understand their unexpected guest. But as I revealed to my students, this was only the beginning. The humans' compassion and Tharos's desperation were about to intertwine in ways none could have predicted. And with the Zorgon threat looming, time was a luxury they could ill afford. So I continued. The scene was set. The players were in place, and the next moves would determine not just the fate of Tharos and his rescuers, but potentially the outcome of the entire war. The humans, so new to the galactic stage, were about to find themselves at the center of a conflict that had raged for generations, and they would soon learn that in the vastness of space, no good deed goes unpunished. As the days passed and Tharos regained his strength, he began to open up to his human rescuers. He spoke of the brutal war raging between the Ocampa and the Zorgons, of the countless lives lost and the worlds ravaged. He described the Zorgons' relentless advance, their superior numbers and firepower pushing the Ocampa to the brink of defeat. Captain Parker listened intently, his brow furrowed with concern. He recognized the severity of the situation and knew that the humans could not stand idly by. In a meeting with his team, Parker laid out his plan. "We're going to help Tharos repair his ship and contact the Ocampa High Command," he declared. "If we can get him back to his people, it could turn the tide of the war." Sergeant Thompson, the team's engineer, nodded in agreement. "I've been studying the Ocampa technology," she said. "With Tharos's help, I think we can get his ship operational again." But not everyone was on board. Corporal Chen spoke up, his voice laced with apprehension. "Sir, with all due respect, is it wise to get involved in an alien war? We don't know the full story here. What if we end up making things worse?" Parker fixed Chen with a steady gaze. "I understand your concerns, Corporal, but we have an opportunity here not just to do the right thing, but to establish relations with the Ocampa. Think of what we could learn from them, the doors it could open for humanity." As Thompson and Tharos worked tirelessly on the ship repairs, Lieutenant Mitchell and Corporal Chen focused on fortifying the outpost. They knew that if the Zorgons discovered Tharos's location, they would face an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Mitchell oversaw the installation of perimeter defenses, while Chen drilled the outpost's security personnel in new combat tactics. Time was running out. The outpost's long-range sensors detected a Zorgon scout ship entering the system, no doubt searching for any sign of Tharos. Parker urged his team to work faster, knowing that every second counted. In a tense moment, Tharos and Thompson managed to bring the ship's communications online. Tharos quickly sent a distress signal to the Ocampa fleet, praying that they would receive it in time. But just as the message was sent, the Zorgon ship pinpointed their location. Alarms blared throughout the outpost as the Zorgon ship began its descent. Parker and his team steeled themselves, ready to defend their position and their alien ally. They knew they were facing an enemy they barely understood, but they were resolved to stand their ground. Tharos watched the humans prepare for battle, a mix of emotions swirling within him. These primitive beings, so different from his own people, were willing to risk everything to help him. They were his only hope now, not just for his own survival, but for the future of the Ocampa. If the humans could buy him enough time to escape and rejoin his fleet, perhaps they could still find a way to defeat the Zorgons. The ground shook as the Zorgon ship landed, its hatches opening to reveal the first glimpse of the enemy. The humans, weapons at the ready, formed a defensive line. Parker stood at the front, his eyes locked on the emerging threat. This was it, the moment of truth. The humans were about to face their first real test in the galactic arena, and the fate of the Ocampa hung in the balance. The battle was joined. Parker, Mitchell, and Chen took cover behind the outpost's makeshift barricades as the first wave of Zorgon shock troopers poured out of their landing craft. The air sizzled with the heat of energy weapons as the two sides exchanged fire. "Aim for the gaps in their armor," Parker shouted over the din of battle, "and watch out for those energy blades." The humans fought with a ferocity that belied their small numbers. They used the outpost's terrain to their advantage, luring the Zorgons into narrow corridors and tight spaces where their superior numbers counted for less. Mitchell set traps and ambushes, using improvised explosives to take out groups of the enemy at a time. Meanwhile, inside the outpost, Thompson worked feverishly with Tharos to bring his ship back online. "We need more power to the engines," Tharos grunted, his hands flying over the unfamiliar human interface. "Reroute everything you can spare." Thompson nodded, sweat beading on her brow as she worked to integrate the outpost's power systems with the alien ship. It was a race against time, and they both knew it. Outside, the battle raged on. The humans were holding their own, but the Zorgons kept coming. For every one they cut down, 2 more seemed to take their place. Parker knew they couldn't hold out forever. In a daring move, the captain broke from cover, sprinting towards the Zorgon landing craft. Chen provided covering fire, his rifle spitting plasma bolts at the enemy. Parker leaped into the open hatch of the alien ship, disappearing inside. Moments later, a series of explosions rocked the craft, and it listed heavily to one side, smoke pouring from its engines. The captain emerged, his face smudged with soot, a triumphant grin on his lips. "That ought to even the odds a bit," he said as he rejoined his team. And even they were. With their landing craft crippled, the Zorgons found themselves cut off from reinforcements and supplies. The humans pressed their advantage, pushing the enemy back. Just then a roar of engines split the sky. Tharos's ship, repaired and ready for battle, rose from the outpost, its weapons glowing with power. The Ocampa general wasted no time, opening fire on the Zorgon positions, his ship's advanced weaponry cutting through their ranks like a scythe. The tide had turned. The Zorgons, caught between Tharos's ship and the human defenders, began to falter. And then, like a miracle, the Ocampa fleet arrived, dropping out of hyperspace in a blaze of light. The Zorgon mothership, suddenly outgunned and outmatched, turned to flee. But not before it launched one final, desperate salvo at the planet's surface. In that moment, Parker saw the energy blast heading straight for Tharos's ship. He didn't hesitate. The captain leaped, throwing himself into the path of the beam. The world went white. When the light faded, Parker lay on the ground, his chest a smoking ruin. Tharos was at his side in an instant, cradling the human's head in his lap. "You saved me," the general whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Why?" Parker coughed, blood flecking his lips. "It's what we do," he rasped. "We look out for each other, no matter what." As the Zorgon ships fled, and the Ocampa fleet secured orbit, Tharos and the humans gathered around their fallen leader. They had won the day, but at a terrible cost. "Stay with us, Captain," Mitchell urged, his voice breaking. "We'll get you patched up. You'll be fine." But even as they spoke, they could see the light fading from Parker's eyes. The captain's breath came in shallow gasps, each one a struggle. Tharos gripped Parker's hand, his alien fingers intertwining with the humans. "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten," he vowed. "Your people and mine, we are brothers now, bound by blood and honor." Parker managed a weak smile. "Glad to hear it," he whispered. "Take care of my team, they're good people." "I will," Tharos promised. "I swear it." With that, Captain Parker, the man who had brought humanity into the galactic stage in the most unexpected way, breathed his last. His team, the people he had led and inspired, the alien he had saved, all bowed their heads in grief and respect. The battle was over. The Zorgons were in retreat. The alliance between human and Ocampa had been forged in the crucible of combat, but the cost had been high. And as Tharos and the others bore Parker's body back into the outpost, they knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more battles to come, more sacrifices to be made, but they would face them together, human and Ocampa, united by the memory of the man who had given everything to bring them together. As Sirius recounted this pivotal moment in history, his students sat in rapt attention, their eyes wide with wonder and respect. They had heard the stories of the Great Zorgon War, of the alliance that had turned the tide. But to hear it like this, to feel the emotions, the sacrifice, the triumph and the loss, it was something else entirely. In the aftermath of that fateful battle, Tharos and the human medical team fought desperately to save Captain Parker's life. They used every bit of their combined knowledge and technology, Ocampa and human alike, to try to heal the captain's grievous wounds. Lieutenant Mitchell paced anxiously outside the medical bay, his face drawn and haggard. But despite their valiant efforts, it was not to be. Captain Parker, the man who had brought humanity into the galactic stage, who had forged an unlikely alliance in the heat of battle, succumbed to his injuries. The news hit the human team like a shockwave. They had lost not just a leader but a friend, a brother in arms. Mitchell, Parker's longtime friend and second in command, was particularly devastated. He had been by Parker's side through countless missions, had trusted him with his life. And now he was gone. Tharos, too, felt the weight of the loss. Parker had saved his life, had risked everything to help a stranger from the stars. The Ocampa general stood silently by the captain's bedside, his head bowed in respect and sorrow. But even in his grief, Tharos knew that Parker's sacrifice could not be in vain. He vowed then and there to honor the captain's memory by ensuring that the alliance he had forged would endure. The Ocampa and the humans would stand together, united against the Zorgon threat. And so, as the Ocampa fleet took up positions around the human outpost, Tharos began the work of turning a battlefield truce into a lasting partnership. The Ocampa High Command, recognizing the valor and resourcefulness the humans had shown, eagerly engaged with the United Earth Space Agency. Technology was shared, intelligence exchanged, strategies debated. But it was not a seamless process. As I explained to my students, cultural differences and lingering mistrust on both sides threatened to undermine the fragile alliance. The humans, while grateful for the Ocampa's help, were wary of becoming too dependent on alien technology. They sought to maintain their autonomy, their identity as a species. There were tense meetings, heated arguments, moments when it seemed the partnership might fracture, but always the memory of Captain Parker and the sacrifices made on that fateful day brought them back together. And so, as the war with the Zorgons raged on, the Ocampa and the humans learned to work together, to trust each other. They fought side by side in battles across the stars, each bringing their unique strengths to the field. The Ocampa's advanced technology and the humans' daring tactics proved a formidable combination. But the cost was high. Lives were lost, worlds were scarred. Each victory was tempered by the weight of those who had fallen, and through it all, the shadow of Captain Parker loomed large. The story closed as such stories often do, with a funeral. The human team, led by a somber Lieutenant Mitchell, gathered to pay their final respects to their fallen leader. Tharos stood with them, his alien features etched with grief. It was a moment that transcended species, transcended culture. It was a moment of shared loss, shared remembrance, and as I looked out at the faces of my students, I could see that they understood the significance of that moment. For it was not just about the individuals involved, not just about Parker or Tharos or Mitchell. It was about something larger, something more profound. It was about the bond that had been forged between two peoples, a bond born of blood and sacrifice and a shared commitment to stand against the darkness. I let my gaze sweep the room, taking in each young, eager face. "Remember this," I said, my voice ringing with the weight of history. "True strength lies not in technology or physical might. It lies in the courage to stand for what is right, in the willingness to sacrifice for a cause greater than oneself." Captain Parker understood this. Tharos understood it. The men and women who fought and died alongside them understood it. And as we face the challenges of our time, as we confront the threats that loom over our horizon, we must understand it too. My students sat in silence, absorbing the weight of my words. I could see in their eyes that they grasped the magnitude of the lesson, the importance of the legacy they were inheriting. And as I ended my tale, as I let the last words hang in the air, I knew that Captain Parker's sacrifice, and the sacrifices of all those who had followed him, had not been in vain. For here, in this room, in the hearts and minds of these young Ocampa, the alliance he had forged would live on. The future was uncertain, the road ahead fraught with peril. But as long as we held true to the principles that had brought us together, as long as we stood united in the face of adversity, there was hope. There was always hope. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.